On a chilly April morning in 2004, the quiet streets of Lowell, Massachusetts, were carrying a sense of normalcy that belied a hidden horror. Emily Crawford, a 24-year-old elementary school teacher known for her warm smile and dedication to her students, had been reported missing by her parents the previous evening. Her apartment, a modest third-floor unit in a brick building near Merrimack Street, showed no signs of forced entry, no overturned furniture, no struggle. Emily's car was gone, and a faint sense of dread began to settle over her close-knit family. Her father, Thomas Crawford, a retired postal worker, felt an instinctive worry that refused to be quelled. Emily had always been responsible, never staying out late, and always calling if plans changed. The initial search by friends and neighbors yielded nothing, and by the next morning, the Lowell Police Department had officially opened a missing person investigation. Detective Karen Mullins, a veteran of 15 years on the force, was assigned to the case. From the outset, she sensed that this would not be a straightforward disappearance. Emily was a careful, methodical person. She would never vanish voluntarily without leaving some trace, and yet there was none. Her cell phone records revealed it had been switched off shortly after she left work, her last calls being routine, nothing unusual. Emily's friends described her as lively, full of life and plans, someone who often stayed late at school to prepare lessons and help students who struggled. None could imagine her disappearing without warning. As the days passed, the anxiety deepened. Flyers were posted, local radio stations broadcast her photo, and a small community of friends and family organized search parties. Yet, every lead seemed to fizzle out, leaving only a gnawing emptiness and fear that something terrible had happened. Then, a breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source. A jogger who often ran through the wooded area behind Riverside Park reported noticing a small bundle, partially hidden beneath fallen leaves near a narrow footpath. When officers arrived, they found Emily's lifeless body, wrapped in a thin blanket, her hands carefully folded across her chest. There were no signs of sexual assault, no robbery, no theft. The scene was eerie in its silence, an almost ritualistic calm in the midst of horror. Emily had been strangled, her cause of death confirmed by the county medical examiner, Dr. Samuel Hanley. The precision and lack of struggle suggested she knew her attacker, or that he had carefully planned the encounter. Investigators combed the surrounding area for clues, but the crime scene yielded almost nothing. No footprints were found nearby, no fingerprints on the blanket, and no evidence of a weapon other than the ligature used to strangle her, which was absent when the body was discovered. It was as if the perpetrator had vanished into the mist, leaving behind only Emily's body and a community in shock. The first leads focused on people she knew, anyone who might have had a motive. Emily's boyfriend at the time, a local store clerk named Jason Whitman, was cooperative but offered no useful information. Friends, co-workers, even neighbors were questioned extensively. Detectives examined Emily's personal life, her banking, emails, phone calls, and social interactions. Everything appeared normal. Her family was devastated. Her mother, Laura Crawford, struggled to maintain composure while recounting Emily's last day, the laughter they shared, the plans for her upcoming summer vacation. The community was united in grief, holding vigils and lighting candles at Riverside Park, where Emily's body had been found. Over the next few weeks, detectives faced the harsh reality of an unsolved murder. No witnesses had come forward, and forensic technology in 2004 was limited. DNA testing was not as comprehensive or rapid as it would become in the following years. Investigators carefully preserved the evidence, understanding that future advances might eventually provide answers. Months turned into years. Emily's case became a cold file, a haunting memory for the Lowell Police Department and a lingering grief for her family. Yet, Thomas Crawford refused to let the memory of his daughter fade into obscurity. He pressed for continued attention, working with local media, attending community events, and maintaining contact with detectives. His persistence kept Emily's story alive, ensuring that one day the case might see resolution. In 2014, a decade after Emily's murder, forensic science had advanced to a point where previously untestable evidence could now yield results. Detectives re-examined items collected from the crime scene, including the blanket, and discovered trace amounts of DNA that had previously gone undetected. The DNA profile was entered into the National Coders database, a network that allows law enforcement agencies to compare genetic information across the country. Within months, a match was made. The suspect was identified as a man named Henry Langley, 46, who had lived in the Lowell area in 2004 and had a criminal record for assault. At the time of Emily's murder, Langley had worked at a local warehouse and was known to frequent Riverside Park during his breaks. Investigators quickly obtained a warrant for his arrest, but Langley had moved out of state, complicating immediate apprehension. Tracking him down required coordination with multiple law enforcement agencies, ultimately culminating in his arrest in Rhode Island, where he had been living under his own name. When brought back to Massachusetts, Langley maintained a cold, indifferent demeanor, denying any involvement in Emily's murder. The evidence against him was compelling, however. Alongside the DNA match, detectives had pieced together phone records placing him in the vicinity of Emily's apartment on the night she disappeared, and witness testimony confirmed he had been seen in Riverside Park around the time of her murder. At this point, the case, dormant for a decade, was thrust back into the public eye. Local media covered the arrest extensively, emphasizing the persistence of law enforcement and the impact of modern forensic technology. Emily's family, who had spent years in anguish and uncertainty, finally had a glimmer of hope that justice might be served. The arrest also sparked renewed attention to cold cases across Massachusetts, highlighting the importance of revisiting old evidence with new scientific tools. Detectives emphasized the role of genealogy and DNA profiling, tools that had become crucial in identifying suspects in long unsolved cases. Emily's case became a textbook example of how cold case units could leverage modern methods to uncover truth hidden for years. As Henry Langley awaited trial, the Lowell community grappled with the emotions of relief, sorrow, and lingering fear. Families and neighbors reflected on the quiet horror of a young woman's life taken, and the persistence required to bring a perpetrator to justice. For the Crawford family, the journey had been long and harrowing, but the arrest offered a measure of closure, allowing them to honor Emily's memory and begin the slow process of healing. Detectives continued their investigation, meticulously building a case for prosecution, aware that while the arrest was a monumental step, the trial would require careful presentation of evidence, witness testimonies, and the narrative of the decade-long pursuit of justice. The story of Emily Crawford, once a haunting cold case, had transformed into a testament to perseverance, forensic science, and the unwavering resolve of those committed to seeking truth. The months following Henry Langley's arrest were tense and emotionally charged in Lowell. For the Crawford family, the initial relief of knowing the person responsible for Emily's death had been caught was mixed with the anxiety of an impending trial. Thomas and Laura Crawford spent countless hours meeting with prosecutors, reviewing evidence, and preparing to face the courtroom. Every step forward reminded them of the years of uncertainty they had endured, the birthdays, holidays, and milestones Emily had missed, and the life that had been stolen from her. Detective Karen Mullins and her team worked tirelessly to ensure the case against Langley was airtight. The forensic evidence from the blanket and the crime scene had been meticulously documented, but the defense was expected to challenge the DNA results and the timeline of events. To counter this, detectives retraced Langley's movements in 2004, interviewing former co-workers, neighbors, and anyone who could corroborate his presence near Emily's apartment and Riverside Park. Witnesses described Langley as a solitary man, often seen wandering the park late at night. While no one had suspected him at the time, these accounts now painted a picture of premeditation. Emily's friends were called to testify about her personality, her routines, and the nature of her life. They spoke of her dedication to teaching, her love for children, and her warmth toward everyone she met. Their testimony humanized Emily for the jury, turning abstract evidence into the story of a young woman whose life had been cruelly cut short. A key component of the prosecution's case was the DNA evidence, which had only become analyzable with the advancements in forensic technology. Experts from the state crime lab testified about the procedures used to extract and match the DNA, explaining in clear terms how it was linked to Langley, despite the defense's attempts to cast doubt. The meticulous chain of custody and the scientific rigor provided compelling proof. Investigators also presented phone records, placing Langley in the vicinity of Emily's apartment on the night she disappeared. Though he had moved frequently in the years following the murder, the records, along with the eyewitness accounts, helped to reconstruct his movements and reinforce the connection to the crime. The trial proceedings drew significant attention in Lowell, with local news covering the courtroom drama and the families affected by the case. Community members, some of whom had known Emily personally, attended hearings to show support, offering silent solidarity to her grieving parents. For the Crawfords, seeing Langley in the courtroom, calm and detached, was a surreal and painful experience. Yet, it strengthened their resolve to see justice served. Over the course of several weeks, the prosecution and defense presented their cases. The defense attempted to suggest that the DNA could have been contaminated or that the evidence was circumstantial. But the combination of forensic proof, witness testimony, and Langley's suspicious patterns of behavior painted a cohesive narrative. The courtroom became a place where a decade-long mystery was finally being unraveled in public view. During the trial, the emotional weight of Emily's story became evident. Witnesses recounted small, intimate details of her life, her favorite books, her habit of leaving notes for students, her plans for a summer road trip that created a vivid portrait of the young woman whose death had once seemed inexplicable. Each anecdote reminded the jury that this case was not just about evidence, but about a life unjustly taken and the years of suffering endured by those who loved her. Outside the courtroom, the Lowell community reflected on the impact of the case. Vigils and memorials were held in Emily's honor, and local organizations used the moment to emphasize the importance of community vigilance. Reporting suspicious behavior and supporting victims' families. The arrest and trial of Henry Langley inspired renewed interest in other unsolved cases, prompting cold case units to revisit evidence with modern forensic tools. As the trial neared its conclusion, the prosecution delivered a compelling closing argument. They outlined the sequence of events, the timeline, the forensic evidence, and the pattern of Langley's behavior. They emphasized the years of uncertainty and grief suffered by the Crawford family and the moral imperative to bring closure. The defense made its final appeal, but the weight of the evidence against Langley was difficult to refute. In early 2015, after days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict. Henry Langley was found guilty of the murder of Emily Crawford. The courtroom was silent for a moment before the gravity of the verdict sank in. Thomas and Laura Crawford wept quietly, holding each other. The pain of years finally met with a measure of justice. Langley was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never harm another person. For Emily's family, the verdict marked the end of a long, harrowing chapter. While nothing could restore their daughter's life, the official recognition of Langley's guilt brought relief and the opportunity to begin healing. In the months following the trial, the Crawford family focused on preserving Emily's memory. They established a small scholarship in her name for local students pursuing education degrees, ensuring that her passion for teaching would continue to impact the community. Detectives Mullins and her team received recognition for their dedication, particularly for their foresight in preserving evidence that decades later would finally secure justice. Emily's case became a benchmark for cold case investigations, demonstrating the power of modern forensic science and the importance of persistence in law enforcement. The community, though still carrying the shadow of the tragedy, found some comfort in knowing that the person responsible had been held accountable. Stories of Emily's life and the decade-long pursuit of justice were shared in local schools and community centers, serving as both a memorial and a reminder that even when answers seem impossible, diligence and science can uncover the truth. The arrest, trial, and conviction of Henry Langley marked the closure of a case that had haunted Lowell for over a decade, proving that patience, persistence, and advancements in technology could converge to deliver long-awaited justice. The final chapter of Emily Crawford's story unfolded slowly, but with an undeniable sense of closure. In the months following Henry Langley's conviction, the Crawfords navigated a complex mix of grief, relief, and reflection, though nothing could erase the trauma or replace the daughter they had lost. The official acknowledgement of Langley's guilt allowed them to begin reclaiming a sense of peace. Thomas Crawford returned to his work at the local manufacturing plant, but he carried a renewed commitment to community safety. He spoke at neighborhood meetings, sharing his experience and emphasizing the importance of vigilance, particularly for young women living alone or with limited support. Laura Crawford devoted her time to the scholarship fund established in Emily's name, using it as a way to channel her grief into something positive. The fund not only honored Emily's passion for education, but also provided tangible support to students in the Lowell area who aspired to make a difference, echoing the nurturing spirit of the young woman whose life had been cut short. Detectives Mullins and her colleagues continued their work with the cold case unit, using the success of Emily's case as a catalyst for revisiting other unsolved cases. The Lowell Police Department received inquiries from neighboring counties, seeking guidance on integrating modern DNA analysis and genealogy research into dormant investigations. Emily's case became a benchmark, demonstrating that even after years, hidden evidence, preserved correctly, could lead to resolution. Community awareness also increased significantly. Local schools incorporated lessons on personal safety and community responsibility, often citing Emily's story as a real-life example of why attention to warning signs and timely reporting matters. Residents became more engaged with neighborhood watch programs, and the city council allocated resources for improved street lighting in parks and public areas. The story of Henry Langley's arrest and conviction spread beyond Lowell, gaining attention in statewide media. Law enforcement forums discussed the case as an example of persistence and the importance of revisiting old leads with fresh eyes and advanced forensic methods. DNA preservation, witness re-interviews, and the careful review of historical files were highlighted as key factors in solving the decade-old mystery. For Emily's family, the emotional journey continued. Counseling helped Thomas and Laura process the layered grief of losing a child while living through the public spectacle of a trial. Family gatherings became opportunities to honor Emily's memory, sharing stories of her laughter, her dedication, and her gentle nature. Her younger cousins and friends often spoke of her as a guiding presence, someone who, even in absence, shaped their lives through example. The Lowell community also found a measure of collective healing. Vigils and memorials that once focused solely on mourning evolved into celebrations of Emily's life. Parks and school libraries held annual events in her name, emphasizing education, kindness, and community engagement. These gatherings helped channel collective grief into positive action, reinforcing the sense of connection that Emily's life had inspired. Legally, Langley's appeals were systematically reviewed and denied, confirming the validity of the conviction and ensuring that the sentence remained life without parole. This reinforced the message that justice, even delayed, could be achieved when evidence is carefully preserved and investigators remain committed. The conclusion of Emily's case also brought attention to the psychological and societal impacts of long unsolved crimes. Experts in criminal psychology used the case to illustrate the long-term trauma experienced by victims' families, highlighting the importance of providing support services during prolonged investigations. For law enforcement, it underscored the critical need for meticulous evidence handling and the potential of forensic advancements to reopen seemingly hopeless cases. Over time, the legacy of Emily Crawford's life and the successful resolution of her case became intertwined in Lowell's history. New generations learned about her not as a statistic, but as a vibrant, intelligent, and compassionate young woman. Her story became a symbol of resilience, the unwavering determination of a family, and the power of justice systems to adapt and overcome obstacles. In private moments, Thomas and Laura Crawford reflected on the years of uncertainty and the relief brought by the resolution. Though grief never fully disappears, they acknowledged that the truth's revelation brought a sense of moral closure. They spoke openly to friends, students, and community members about the importance of never giving up hope, emphasizing that time could reveal hidden truths and that perseverance often leads to justice. Detectives Mullins and her team continued to carry the lessons from the case into new investigations. The methodologies refined during Emily's case cross-referencing old witness statements, leveraging modern DNA testing, and combining traditional investigative work with genealogy became standard practice in the unit. Emily's story reinforced the notion that patience, combined with emerging technology, could ultimately bridge the gap between the past and justice. Finally, Emily's memory was honored not only through scholarship and community programs, but in the hearts of those who knew her. The pain of loss was enduring, but the certainty of accountability and the closure provided to her family allowed for a degree of healing that had been impossible during the years of uncertainty. Lowell, forever changed by the tragedy, emerged with a renewed sense of vigilance and community solidarity. A city that remembered Emily Crawford as a young woman whose life, though brief, had left an indelible mark. In the quiet moments of reflection, Her parents and friends found solace in knowing that her story had been told. Her life had been honored, and the person responsible had been held accountable. Justice, long delayed, had finally been delivered, proving that even after years of waiting, truth and resolution could be achieved. The memory of Emily Crawford, preserved through education, remembrance, and community action, served as a poignant reminder of the enduring power of perseverance, love, and justice.